good to be alive. Good to be alive. Yeah, it's good to be alive. And we all want to see you thrive. Hang on for the ride. This is Paul Vibes, bringing you a spiritual flow and information that can remedy the soul. A man for the people, message in a bottle, but he threw it in a podcast. Now it's full throttle. Life is never hollow, but if you ever feel twisted or need to be lifted, yo, my man is gifted.
Welcome, Gerald, to Heckscher Park.
I have to thank Paul for bringing me to such a beautiful place. This is amazing. I really liked it a lot.
Bring it in.
Yeah.
Appreciate you coming on.
Always, man.
You know,
always.
We've always had some great conversations in some of our podcasts. Like, still to this day, people reach out about the topics that we've discussed, and they always like, when is Gerald coming back on? So I'm glad that
I was actually thinking of resharing the one.
I think you've done, yeah.
But I mean, now I'm thinking of resharing again because some people have asked me to share.
You know, I was sharing this story with you earlier about how, for those that know, I have a beautiful son. He's 5 years old on the autism spectrum, and as people may know, I also grew up, with my own learning disability, and I work with special needs, and you've worked with different types of people as well, like that. Yeah. And there's so many pressures, like for my son or everybody, to be a certain way, be up to speed, to learn this, to learn that, to be just like the other kids. And my son, like many of us, has strengths and weaknesses, and he has some delays in learning and his speech and different things that he does. And I remember recently I took him down to change him like I do most mornings, and typically in the back of my mind it's the list of things that I need to do for that day, or list of things that I want him to learn or be updated on or to be caught up with. And I remember just sitting there with him in that moment, changing him and just looking at him and just being like, pushing those thoughts aside and just saying, I love you fully how you are in this moment, no matter what so-called delays or things that you need to work on. Like, I just love you fully. And I just felt this weight just release from me, and almost like I saw him differently. And it was kind of scary because I'm like, here he's 5 years old and now I'm starting to see him differently. It's like, what the heck? But what I realized is, like, I looked at him differently because there wasn't this these filters of like, he needs to be this way, or he's not here yet, or he hasn't arrived. Like, he's perfect the way he is. I love him fully, and there's nothing that I would change about him in that moment. And I was sharing that kind of experience that happened.
And as I was listening to you, I recognized that what that really is, and as I was telling you, what that really is this idea of the total collapse of separation, which is the definition of love. Not love that has an adjective attached to it, not love that is qualified in any way whatsoever, but just love. We often have these qualifications for love, or these different definitions like eros and these different types of love that is put forward. But the truth of the matter is that there's only one love, and you experienced that pure love with your son when you had a collapse of separation. And you did not see him as different from you. You saw him as exactly as you are, with the same strengths, rather than seeing him as somebody who is probably a little bit weaker than you are. So it's a complete, so love is the recognition of the shared being, and when you have this recognition of shared being, then it leads to this total collapse of separation. We no longer see ourselves as separate. You and I are sitting here right now, and our conditioned mind is saying you are separate from me. I'm seeing you as different and seeing you as separate. But that's a conditioned mind. That's literally a delusion. We are in fact one. This understanding of this oneness, when we come into this full awareness, we no longer are prejudiced. We no longer see people as less than. We respect everyone. We may not like everyone, but we love everyone, which is really, for me, as a Buddhist, is a prerequisite for me. There's some people that come around me and they have very negative energy. and they may do some things that I may not like what they're doing, but it cannot stop me from loving them because I see them as me. You know, I think it was what's her name? Mother Teresa. They ask her, you know, that she sometimes would meet thousands of people and greet them and so on and talk to them a little bit. And they asked her once, how do you greet all those people and still have this and greet every single one in the same way, whether they are diplomats, whether they're beggars, lepers, the same way you greet them. And she said, every single person that I see God in all his disguises. When I read that, I'm like, wow, you know, God in all his disguises. So, you know, it's like we all belong to this oneness, this divine soul, this divine being. We're all part of that. And it's only through our delusion that we see ourselves as separate. So, you know, for me, for the past 6 years, I've been really practicing becoming untethered from all external identification. I no longer look at these identifications, these labels that are placed on us. Oh, that's a black person, that's a white person, that's a skinny person, that's a fat person, because with each of those labels come a certain thought process and oftentimes a certain amount of prejudice. So I see people as divine beings, every single person, you know. I extend the same thought process to animals, you know, as a divine being, to the tree as divine. You know, it's interesting because we're intimately tied to the tree, but we don't really think about it. They give off oxygen, we breathe it in. We give off carbon dioxide, they breathe it in. And so without them, we can't exist. But a lot of people don't pay attention to those things. But it's important for you to get to the place where you can actually start seeing people for exactly who they are and not who your thoughts or your perception think they are. I started on this journey literally about 20 years ago. I met this man in Penn Station, and I was coming home. I was coming home from. I used to work in a law firm for a number of years.
I remember you saying that, yeah.
And we had just closed. We're closing a case. So we spent all night. So I came down to Penn Station in the morning to go home to get back to work. And there's a seat in the corner, and I was exhausted, Paul. I'm telling you, I was just so tired. So I said I have to grab that seat. So I ran to the seat. I sat down, and then quickly realized why nobody was sitting there. There was a man next to me, and he smelled the worst smell that I've just smelled in a long time.
You can remember it now?
I remember it. And he was sitting there, and he had his little shopping cart, and he was, you know, very tattered and so on. And I sat down, and my first thought was to get up. And I said, no, I'm really tired, I'm going to sit. And I reached in my bag, and I pulled out a book to kind of distract myself, you know, as I wait for the train. And it's a book called Wretched of the Earth, and it's written by a black psychologist called Franz Fanon. It's not a very popular book, but Fanon is recognized within the circles of psychology and so on as in the same category as Freud and Jung and these guys, right? So I'm there and I'm just reading and distract myself, and he says to me, that's a very good book. And in my head, right? In my head, I say, what does he know about this book? He doesn't know anything about this book. And I went on, I just ignored it and went on to read. And then he started talking to me about the book that I'm reading. He's telling me about the book that I'm reading. So this book is one of my favorite books. I've read it many times, right? And so I know what he's saying is true. And I'm like, wow. So I said to him, how do you know about this book? And he says, I used to teach.
No.
Yes, he said, I used to teach students these books. He used to teach at NYU. Then you know, an hour go by, and the smell begin to disappear. The smell that I smelled when I first sat down, I looked at him, and I saw him, with my perception. I saw him with my conditioned mind. I didn't see him with my pure, aware mind, my divine mind. I saw him with my conditioned mind. And as time go on, there was this collapse of separation that we're talking about that began to occur. I sat in for 3 hours. I missed three trains. I missed 3 trains.
I missed your spot, yeah.
Yeah, I sat with him and I, started talking to him, and he told me about some other books that Frantz Fanon wrote. A couple of them I didn't know about, and I'm a Fanon fan,
Yeah.
And we talked, and he had an unfortunate incident where he lost his wife and his child, and he just checked out. He just checked out, and then ended up where he is now.
Wow.
And so we sat there and we talked for a while, and back then, now people have cell phones.
Yeah.
So it's easy to exchange information and so on. So, we just said, man, I see you some other time. When I come to Penn Station, I'll look you up. I'll look and see where you are, because he told me he was always around. Yeah. But that for me was one of my greatest teachers.
Wow.
And then for the past 6 years, I've been really focusing on really becoming untethered from these identifications, even certain perceptions that may come about when I look at certain things, certain sensations in my body, when I see certain things. I started becoming totally untethered from that. And I think I'm doing pretty well at it right now, even my name, Gerald, it's a name, right? And so with that, within my family and even among certain people who may think they know me, there's an expectation. You see? So, Gerald, and from Gerald arises these thoughts from other people when they hear it, and they go, well, Gerald is this or Gerald is that, right? But that's not fully who I am. That's not truly who I am, For them to get to know who I am, they have to go beyond the name and their idea of what that is, and that's based upon things they heard from other people.
Biases,
they may hear me talk, and they say, oh, that's the type of person it is. There is some truth to some of it, but to fully know me, you have to, you can't see me as Gerald. You have to see me as you, as a oneness, as you and I being the same. That is how you come to fully appreciate and understand me. And so what you felt that morning with your son was you became untethered from all the thoughts that you had about what he should or shouldn't be. And you accepted him totally for exactly who he is in that moment, and that collapse, right? And you love your son, right? But there was a deeper love that comes as you had that experience, and the collapse, and you became just one in that moment. And you were telling me how that was such a wonderful experience.
From what I've seen, and just interacting with you and being around your energy and the people that you've been able to connect with, and it's been definitely beneficial and supportive of my journey. So I appreciate the work that you've done on yourself.
Nelson Mandela, when he became the president of South Africa, around the world there was chatter as to, oh wow, what is he going to do? What is he, is he going to chase the people out? Is he going to, start arresting people? Is he going to, for the crimes that they committed and for the atrocities that took place under apartheid system? And when he went ahead and he created what they call the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, which was a committee that looked into those atrocities and to see how they can compensate those who have been hurt, but at the same time as a way of bringing South Africa together, as a way of collapsing the separateness that existed and was the core of the apartheid system. The apartheid system was built on the idea of difference. So his idea was to totally take away that separation, and he went about it through sports, through rugby, where people often, everyone under one umbrella in the stadium cheering for the one team. And where now he started incorporating people of color into the rugby team and so on and so on, right? So it was, I'm not sure if a lot of people recognize how amazing that was. Rather than be the person who was bitter, because he was incarcerated for over 20-something years under that regime, and he had no anger, none whatsoever. He came out, had no anger, which is an amazing thing, you know. And I think history will absolve him when they begin to recognize how powerful that was, that he actually put aside all of that anger, if he had it, put aside completely, and say, hey, let's not be different. Let us be one. Unfortunately, you know, he didn't get a chance to continue on that journey because he was very old, and so he passed away. But it was an amazing thing. It really was. You know, wars are fought based on difference. You know, wars are fought under wanting things to be different from what they are. Yeah, you know. So I continue with this journey. You know, I'm going to continue this journey because I think it's very worthwhile. What it does for me is that I've not been angry in a very, very long time. You know, I mean, in my memory, I can say that I have not been angry in probably about 6-7 years now. Not been angry.
That sounds nice.
Which is an amazing place to be. You know, and when people behave badly towards me or people around me, you know, I see them for exactly who they are, because anyone who behave in that way are hurt people, are sick people, you know. And so I see them, and when I see them, any type of uneasiness or negative sensations that arise in me, just it dissipates, it goes away, you know. It's like the story of the guy who he's walking with his arms full of grocery and it's covering his face, and he's walking on the sidewalk, and then this guy walked, boom, right into him, groceries all over the place, and then he's angry, he's getting hungry, and he turns to the guy and notices that the guy has a cane and he's blind. Immediately, all that anger that was arising in him fall by the wayside. His heart opens up completely to this man who was blind, who could not see, and that was, so he saw him for exactly who he is rather than who he thought he was.
Yeah.
And in that moment, total collapse of separation, compassion, you know, and just love for this individual. And he reached, oh, can I help you? He's trying to help the guy, you know, rather than pick up his groceries and stuff, you know. Yeah, so you see it, you see that in all kinds of examples, you know, during the day. Right after 9/11, and if you remember, right after 9/11, there was a collapse of separation in this country for a brief moment. You know, where people was willing to reach out to others and very, very helpful, and you know, eventually it goes away, because if you don't practice doing these things, you fall back into your conditioned mind. That's what happens, you know. Every single human being spend 95% of their day in their subconscious mind. That's what they do. That's the conditioning of the human mind. The bad thing about that is that the subconscious mind has been storing all the negative stuff that took place from your third trimester in the womb until present. So it stores that stuff and it keeps repeating it, because that's where you live most of the time. It's the mind of repetition. You can only change in the present moment. You cannot change in the past. Right? And the future really doesn't exist, right? What you do is you keep recreating what's in the subconscious mind in the future also. So you're almost like on a hamster wheel. In Buddhist practice, we call it the wheel of samsara.
Suffering.
Yeah. So, you know, we most people, it is, and this was scientifically proven, most people only spend 5% of their any given day awakened moment in present moment. 5% of your time. The other 95, they're on autopilot. It's almost like a program on a computer,
See,
and you download it, and you, you just keep moving, you know, and you keep repeating the same things over and over again, you know. So, yeah, in the AA, they said that doing the same things over and over again and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
There's so many examples of that, you know, in these different processes. But yeah, you know, it's that's been my journey since for over a number of years now, you know. Yeah, for sure.
can I ask you, like, how have you seen your relationships, whether it's family members, loved ones, people you work with? How has your relationship, the way you interact with them, changed? And you shared a little bit, but how have you seen it change through this transformation?
What I found is that in interacting with friends or acquaintances or even family members, I do it with a lot more compassion, you know, a lot more grace, and I try my best in every situation to see them as they are in the here and now, in that moment. So, and I'm sure that once you see someone as they are, you will love them. You will have compassion for them. You know, that is the wonderful thing about that. So I've been trying to do that. So the relationship definitely has changed. It has softened for some people, you know, because I grew up very angry, you know, based upon what my childhood was like. I grew up very, very angry, but I've begun the journey of just keeping that anger away, you know. I think it was James Baldwin who said, for a black man or a black person to be marginally aware in this country is to be always angry. Interesting statement, right? And so, you know, if you keep looking at, if you keep being stuck in the past, or if you keep looking at the present prejudices and so on as personal, because it's not personal, it's a conditioned response. And so you grew up in a household where you're taught this stuff, and then you teach your children, and so on, right? So until somebody decide to break that cycle, it's going to keep going. You know, so it's all based on ignorance. You know, Buddha talks about that the very first teaching, that the cause of suffering, one of the causes of suffering is ignorance. You know, and so the more you become aware, is the more you're able to see things as they are, the reality of something. And how do you become aware? Well, as a Buddhist, we talk about meditation. We talk about exercise, even exercise as a way of supporting the mind. You know,
The things you put in our food.
The things you put in our food, your nutrition is important, you know. And on some level, we all struggle with one thing or another, but we just have to keep knowing that the goal is to become aligned with your divine self, with truly who you are. You know, I grew up in a country where I pretty much, as a young person, followed a Rastafarian tradition, a way of being. And Rastafari is always talking about oneness, always talking about walking in righteousness and walking in divinity, always, as I was growing up. But I didn't really make the connection then, because I was young, and I behaved like a little knucklehead at times, you know. But I see it now very clearly. That's exactly what you're talking about all this time, you know. So I was very grateful to have had that exposure, and that supported me to be in this place right now. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I would love to talk to you about the subtle ways that we as humans, we may not even know it because it's so built into our society, like how we judge or put on these filters. Because there is, and especially in today, I mean every part of history, but especially today with this, there's such a heaviness of identification with culture, groups, countries, my trauma. You know, this victim mentality a lot of times, which is very often, you know, people go through some terrible things. It's not to invalidate the things that people go through, but there's this carrying of such past that prevents, like you said, prevents us from living our best life.
Mahatma Gandhi says, an eye for an eye leaves the world blind. You know, and so someone may do something to you, or you experience it as being done to you, right? If you can just make a shift, a mental shift, or a paradigm shift, and understand that whatever happens in your life happens so that you can grow.
For you, not for you, not
for you.
For you, not to you.
It's for you, right? So whatever it is, anything. You may walk down the street and you get hit by a car and you lose a finger or whatever. Even that is for you to grow, you know? And how you look at it is going to determine whether you grow or you don't. So the mind, the thoughts that you have on any given day, if you can begin to recognize that one thought shifts the entire world. It's almost like what they talk about, that butterfly effect.
Yes.
When butterfly flaps its wings, everything changes in the world, right? One thought, every thought you have changes everything in the world, specifically your world. So if you can just think, if you can just have the thought where this person is me, if I am one with this person, my inclination to disrespect you or to treat you differently or not be helpful to you is totally diminished. All I have to do is begin to see you as me, almost like a mirror. You see you as me. Right? If you can do that, all of the things you're talking about, how we see people as different, the perceptions, the different perceptions based upon this physical stuff, disappears completely. It's not there anymore. And I am pleased to say that this is how I live today. When I'm walking on the street and so on, rather than the judgment that comes up sometimes, you hear about it, people walking in the street, they see this person, they go, oh man, that person's so fat, they shouldn't be wearing that. Or why is that person doing this? Or they would see somebody with someone and like, wow, how does she end up with him or he end up with her? They have all these thoughts in their head, right? Not recognizing, Paul, that those thoughts is what creates your reality. And all you have to do is change them. And the reality is different. How you see people is different. Just change the thought, right? And, thinking is what we do. It's almost like digestion, right?
Automatic.
You can't stop it. It's what we do. But what you're responsible for is if you can see that thought and change it. Because
be the observer.
You're be the observer. You are totally being the witness to it, right? And if you get to a place where you can do that, then you can change the thoughts. Thoughts that come like on a personal level, that comes up like, well, I'm not good enough, or I won't be able to do this or that, and you can change it and say, no, I am good enough. I am worthy. I am, happiness is my birthright. I'm supposed to be happy. If you can now start bringing those thoughts and repeat them every single day, you'll notice that you begin to change. You become a totally different person. When I first came to this country, my first interaction in this country was I went to play a soccer game, a college soccer game, and as I'm coming out of the tunnel, you had people up top was spitting at us.
Wow.
And was saying, "Go home, Kunta Kinte." That was my first interaction in this country, and I used to read a lot about racism and so on, right? But that was my really first experience. I've never experienced racism in Jamaica. Yes, there's a class difference and class prejudice and so on, but never racism. That was an interesting experience, right? Because then it began to condition my mind.
At this point, you weren't fully into your spiritual practice, right?
No.
So how did the old Gerald handle that situation?
I joined some revolutionary organizations. I joined some organizations that were very militant, and so began.
The ego loved that, I bet. Yeah.
Oh yes, yeah, and began that journey of taking back my power. You know, but here's the thing: power doesn't lie outside. You don't have to take it back. It's always in you. It's there. It's always there. It's not something that you reach out here and bring in you. No, you have to go in to get that, right? So, you know, that this guy named Gary Zukav, he calls it authentic power versus external power. We live on the idea of the external power, but it doesn't exist. It really doesn't. You know, at any point that I've ever got in a fight when I was younger or whatever, and I win, so to speak, right? I never felt better. It has never made me feel good. I always felt worse, you know, for hurting someone, always.
Yeah.
And so I come to realize how superficial that is, how delusional that is, this external power. And so I started going in again. And when I go in, I find it. And it's so amazing. And the strength of it is just unbelievable, you know. And, you know, I'm hoping that with this we're talking about, that people just begin to think about it. That's all. Just begin to think about this idea of going inside and really begin to question your thoughts, always. You know, Buddha says, question everything that I say to you, question your thoughts. You know, this is one of the reasons why I love Buddhism so much. He's not saying, he's not putting forward any type of dogma. You know, it's not like, this is what it is.
Follow this.
Follow this. No. He's saying, hey, this is what I observe. This is what I observe. And it has made me this way. I think it can make you that way. But check it out.
Discover for yourself.
Yes, you know.
That's amazing.
Question everything. You know, and the more I question, the more I realize how little I know. There's so much more to know.
Yeah.
You know, and how much joy I feel I have in that understanding, how much gratitude I have in that understanding. You know, I didn't think I would live to be 65.
I'm happy you did.
But here I am at 65, and in this moment, I'm happier than I've ever been in my entire life. You know, and I have less material things. It's interesting. I have less material things. You know, at one point I thought if you had more material stuff, you were happy. No, it doesn't work that way. You know, because all you do is want more and more and more.
You attach to those things. If you lose it, it brings you unhappy.
Big problem. I remember reading in the Wall Street Journal once. I was reading this guy after the crash. He was a billionaire, and he lost something like $20 million, right? $20 million. But he's a billionaire, and the guy jumped through the window. I'm saying to myself, wow, kind of loss of perspective there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you're a billionaire, you lost 20. It's like me losing $20.
Yeah.
You know,
Perspective. Yeah.
it's perspective, right? But because it defined who he was.
Yes.
You know, you've heard of what's his name, Waldo Emerson, I think that's his name.
Yeah.
And he went in the cabin in the woods and started writing and so on, right? I remember reading something where they said when he first got there, he felt so lonely and felt out of place. He didn't know what to do for a little while, you know. And it's only because the things that he did before defined who he was. You know, or the guy who retired from Wall Street and goes off into the cabin, into the woods to live his best life and don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Totally lost. Because now he has to redefine himself and not be attached to those material things and ways of thinking. Yeah. So he has to change all of that. And that's when he comes to the full realization of self. In those moments, you know, when all the material stuff fall away, when he loses everything.
Yeah.
You know,
it's something that comes to mind throughout my spiritual journey, and just listening to you say, is that we have a society that's built upon more. The more education, the more degrees, the more fit, the better, the hotter the partner, the more money you have. That's how you become more.
Yeah.
And what I'm starting to realize in my spiritual journey is less is more. It's almost like we need to go through this play of form, this experience to realize that what we are is underneath it all.
Yes.
It's who we've always been.
Yes.
And it's untouched, it's untethered from the world, but we need this world is almost like a lesson to go through it and be like, wow, like this, I thought this made me happy, but it doesn't, or I thought this made me happy.
Yeah.
But happiness is from within. Like we could have as much money as we could imagine, we could have as the biggest house, the biggest thing, but that's not what's really. And notice how a lot of the richest, wealthiest people we could find, the suicide rate, the addictions, because if that was total happiness.
I mean, divorce rates are up to 65% in this country.
But why? They're supposed to be happy at the white picket fence.
Exactly. Even with all of the white picket fence and the dog named Spot, they're
maybe the fence needs to be a different color.
Probably.
That's probably why.
Probably, for sure. But you know, it's interesting. But the world is. I've seen also that the world is slowly beginning to embrace this mindfulness perspective. They're teaching mindfulness in medical schools now. They're teaching it at kindergarten. It's slowly beginning to really question how the desirous life that we live, the materialistic life we live, it's slowly beginning to question those things. For some people it's too slow, but for me, it is what it is happening as it should.
It should, yeah.
Yes, you know, so it's going to change eventually. We may lose a lot in the process. You know, because here's the thing, Paul, make no mistake about it. I like quality things also, like everybody else.
Yeah.
You know, if I had a choice between good food rather than not good food, I would go for the good food. Unfortunately, the good food probably costs a little bit more, you know, or a pair of shoe that is a certain quality shoe rather than one that's not. And you know, like I have a winter boot that I've had now for over 35 years, and if you look at it, it's almost like it's probably just came off the shelf. You know, I when I first saw it, it cost a lot, but my thinking was, this is such a sturdy, strong boot, and I said, I'm getting it.
Yeah.
So I closed my eyes and I got it. You know, it's still with me after 35 years, and it has outlived 4 or 5 other shoes that I bought for less. You know, in an attempt to be frugal, and you know, but yeah, there are certain things that because we live in a capitalist society, they may cost a lot. There's a certain quality to it, and there's nothing that says that if you become, once you take on this spiritual journey, that you should not like quality. It really is, you know. It just means that you can't be attached to it.
Yeah.
As some people are attached, you know, or not allow it to define who you are. If I were to lose my boot, I love it, that boot, by the way. If I was to lose it tomorrow, it's okay. You know, but some people would be like, oh my God, I will never wear another winter shoes. They just go to the extreme with that type of thing, you know. But yeah, it's there's still something to be said, and I have to say that because some people might be thinking, well, oh, you want me to walk around in rags and be tattered? No, that's not what I'm talking about. You know, I'm talking about don't become attached.
Yeah.
Don't become attached.
I like this. I think it's Wayne Dwyer. Be open to everything, attached to nothing.
Yes.
And I will say that's something that's easier said than done, because especially you've been in the spiritual journey a little bit longer than I have, but it's one thing to talk about it, right?
Yeah.
But then when big loss comes within our lives, that's the lesson. What I'm noticing is that ego, that buildup of pain. Oh, I'm upset about this. I don't want this to be my life. Will happen still, but then later, the period of the gap of when I realized, oh wow, I didn't need to react that way. I didn't have to be taken over by my thoughts.
Yeah.
I was observed. Better late than never, but I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about the observer, because that's something I've been working on. Is okay, I'm feeling depressed or I'm feeling this way. Is there truth in it? By going deeper into that depression, is that going to serve me? Is that going to be helpful in my journey? Because sometimes our thoughts, we take it as absolute truth.
So some people go deeper into it with the intention of trying to push it away, to get rid of it. Right? That will never work. Going deeper means that you embrace it for what it is, as we're talking about, right? And really seeing it for exactly what it is, and knowing that it is part of that thing that supports you to grow. There's a completely different way of seeing what you know, depression or sadness. You know, we are hardwired for pleasure, So our natural inclination, or our conditioned inclination really, because that's not the natural inclination. The conditioned inclination is to always try to push it away. So, we feel a little pain. Oh, don't want that. Take an aspirin, take a this, push, oh, just take this. We keep pushing it away. But science now has proven that works temporarily. Because it does work. Otherwise, people will keep doing it.
Yeah.
It does work. When you shoot up heroin, for instance, for a brief moment, you don't think about the problems,
the bills and the worries.
Yeah, you don't think about those things. But that's temporary. It's impermanent. And anything that's impermanent, you cannot stand on, because it won't last. So the idea is to bring it in, and really look at it with the intention of saying, all right, beloved sadness, I see that you're here for me. Help me to suffer less. It's a whole different relationship than sadness. Oh my God!
Go away.
Get away! Get away! Get away!
What you resist persists.
What you resist persists, right? So the idea is to bring it inside.
I like that.
There's a 13th century poet called Rumi. Have you heard of
Rumi? Of course.
He wrote a poem called Guest House, which is one of the more famous poems, right? Where he talks about this thing called being human. He says, is a guest house. Chaos comes, pleasure comes, people come, people go. He says, invite them all in, because they're all a gift from God. This mystic, this 13th century mystic, Rumi, certainly, understood this idea of bringing it in, and there's a practice in Buddhism called Tongling, which comes from a bigger group of practice called Lojong practice, which is in meditation, breathing in the uncomfortability, breathing in the pain and suffering, and transforming it.
Transmutation, I love it.
Yeah. And then breathing out the goodness of it, and also with the wish that anybody in the world that is having this experience no longer have this experience. Because you have to go beyond just yourself when you're having these experiences, because you're connected to the world.
Yeah.
So when you bring it in, you breathe it out, and also you breathe out with the wish that anyone in the world that is having this experience. So, today I might go without eating, and this is very uncomfortable, but let me bring this in, transform this. Today I go without eating, and it may be very good to fast.
I love that.
And then you breathe out. Listen, for anybody who's going without eating, may they have the understanding that it's okay. Tomorrow they may eat. So it's a whole different way of seeing these things, and so you feel differently, you get stronger, so yeah, I'm on this journey. My biggest struggle now is exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We walked a little bit today, yeah?
Yeah, we did.
Maybe that could be our thing. We could start doing walking videos.
Yes, I went to Avalon Park yesterday.
Beautiful.
And I went for a walk, because it's the first in a while that I've really been on for such a long walk, And then my knees started hurting and so on, and I go home and elevate my foot and so on, and this morning I woke up, there was no pain, So I know I have to walk more, and I'm saying this because I don't want anyone to think that I have the answer to it. I don't. I'm still struggling like everybody else. I still have certain hiccups, certain hang-ups.
You're human beings.
Yeah, of course. So but the journey is important for me right now, and the journey is supporting me, I think, to be a better person. Yeah, for sure.
Well, it shows, and I appreciate all the conversations we have, and seeing the work that you do in the community, and I look forward to doing more content with you and filming. And
yeah, man, I love talking to you, man. I love coming here and talking to you. It's always a wonderful experience for me,
Yeah.
I was looking over the one we did with Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
We talked about Black Lives Matter. I really love that one.
Yeah.
Just hearing what's his name, the young man. I can't remember his name. The young man that did to us.
The video, but yeah, there was some good perspectives, and
Yes.
you really listened to that perspective. Yeah.
I really enjoy that, and the young lady too. I actually I've seen her on Facebook, and I really enjoy. She teaches yoga.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really enjoy that. you enjoy that talk. And I'm like, wow, okay.
Yeah. Well, that's what I would like. I think, we're talking about separateness, and I think that having different perspectives, having an opportunity, like a round table discussion, you hear the other point of view, and seeing that, and you find oftentimes that you have a lot more in common.
Yes.
We all want the same thing. We're just coming at it from different angles.
That the young man really, he surprised me. I gotta tell you, I in my head when I saw him when he was young, and again, you have this label, I'm like, oh wow, okay, what would he know about historically struggle? He knew a lot.
He knew a lot. Maybe we should have him back on and see a couple years later.
Yes, he
how
knew
we
a lot.
all.
He knew a lot, and I like his perspective too. For sure, man.
We're gonna link to that video. If you're watching this and you want to know about that, it'll be in the description. But I really appreciate our conversation today because it was perfect. We were talking about even before, and this idea of unconditional love, untethering, not being so identified with our mind, realizing the sameness, the oneness with all beings.
All beings.
And that's radical. I think that's what we need in the world right now.
We absolutely need that right now. And I think we're going to go there. We're going to get there. Take a little while, but we're going to get there.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with the generations, but the latest generation, is that X or is that
Z? X?
Z?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Is it X?
I think so.
Whatever the latest one is, I'm noticing, and people, I've heard older folks kind of put them down. They're lazy. One of the things that I've noticed is that in their relationships, that they have begun the idea of just collapsing separateness. That they have all kinds of different relationships, and I'm like, wow, this. And some people may not agree, or they may disagree, but what I see is this collapse of separateness. And not labeling this person as this or but hey, listen, we're gonna come together. What you like is great with me, and you respect what I like, and it's a good movement. It's a good movement.
And it comes in cycles. It fluctuates in generations, and wow. But as always, it's a pleasure having you on, Gerald, and people watching this. If you guys want us to talk, have different discussions with Gerald or different topics, please let us know. But as always, thank you for coming on. I'd love to.
I love this forum, and I love talking to you, and I truly appreciate the conversation. For sure.
I always feel high naturally after Gerald's conversations, and I look forward to looking back at this podcast because it's really true to me how I've been. What I've been doing myself. Thank you. Bring it in, brother.
One love, man.
One love, man.
One love. I love this.